Welcome back to the Forge College Engineering Lab. Seriously, I am so glad you're here for this explainer. Today, we're taking all that messy, kind of terrifying raw execution data from our last hands-on expedition, and we're going to transform it into a bulletproof engineering blueprint. We are diving deep into runtime performance, constraints, and trade-offs. It's essentially the ultimate architectural showdown between the EVM and the SVM. So, if you're staring at a giant mountain of unnormalized traces in CSV files right now, maybe wondering what life choices led you here, hey, just take a deep breath. Data without structure is really just noise, right? But today, we're going to channel all that noise into a highly structured, totally undeniable set of architectural conclusions, hopefully before it blows up your lab. Okay, let's take a quick look at our blueprint for today. First, setting up the lab. Second, gathering your evidence. Third, processing the data. Fourth, drafting the trade-offs. And finally, number 5, the final sanity check. Let's get right into it.
Part 1, setting up the lab, where we'll be defining our constraints.
Before we start handling all this volatile data, we absolutely need to know our constraints. Think of this as the actual physics of our lab environment. Basically, a runtime constraint dictates exactly what an application can do before it completely runs out of breath. For the EVM, we're talking about your block-level gas limits. And for the SVM, it's those per-transaction compute unit caps. These are absolutely not polite suggestions, folks. These are the hard limits that literally force you to make those really tough design choices.
All right, moving on to Part 2, gathering your evidence, or as I like to call it, pulling together our raw materials.
To make sure literally nobody can poke holes in your final document, you're going to need 3 key ingredients. We need the execution traces we generated back in Lesson 3, your normalized metric tables from Lesson 2, and of course, the raw logs from your controlled benchmark runs. Mixing these together proves that your claims aren't just, abstract theory. They are cold, hard, observed reality.
Setting up your pipeline is super simple. First step, just shove all your files into a dedicated runtime evidence folder. Let's be real, organization is half the battle here. Second, draft out your markdown skeleton. And third, if you suddenly realize, oh no, I'm missing a critical latency log, don't panic. Seriously, just run a really quick, controlled synthetic benchmark against a local node. Capture that data, and you're totally golden.
Okay, Part 3, processing the data, which means sending it through the normalization pipeline.
Now, this is crucial. Treating EVM gas prices like SVM compute units is exactly like mixing completely incompatible chemicals in a beaker. Think about it. A basic EVM transaction runs about 21,000 gas, while an SVM transaction costs 5,000 compute units. They measure entirely different mechanics. If you just blindly put these numbers side by side without actually normalizing them first, well, your final comparison is going to blow up right in your face. So to achieve this normalization safely, we use a little bit of Python automation. By simply parsing your logs, you can spit out a really clean, normalized CSV file. You want consistent columns here, your network source, latency in milliseconds, and your normalized cost units. Do this, and suddenly, apples can actually be compared to apples. It's a real game changer.
Which brings us to Part 4, drafting the trade-offs. This is where the blueprint really emerges. Now, we actually map those raw metrics directly to practical architectural implications. Take a look at median latency for a second. We have the EVM at 120 milliseconds locally and the SVM at 80. The implication there? The SVM has a clear, measurable advantage for small, rapid transactions. And what about state write costs? Well, it's high in the EVM, but moderate on the SVM. That essentially means state-heavy, highly complex contracts are going to burn a huge hole in your pocket on Ethereum. You see, this is the exact concrete data a senior engineer needs to make a real platform choice. When you're drafting your own prioritized trade-offs, here is a basically foolproof 3-step formula for you. First, just write a short, super clear description of the trade-off. Second, back it up instantly. Cite those normalized CSV measurements we just talked about. And third, provide a mitigation strategy or design implication. The key here is to connect every single point back to your original evaluation rubric. Make those numbers actually mean something, right? Finally, Part 5, the final sanity check. It's time to bulletproof this document. Before you even think about submitting, we are going to run a strict 3-point safety protocol. Number 1, automated checks. Do your files actually exist in the right place? Number 2, the evidence review. If I ran your exact scripts, would I get the exact same results? And number 3, the narrative sanity check. Does your logic actually survive contact with reality? I want to double-click on that narrative sanity check for a second. You really need to play devil's advocate here and actively try to falsify your own claims. For instance, if you confidently claim the SVM is faster, just pause. Ask yourself, wait, did local network conditions explain this latency difference? Like, did you accidentally ignore a network blip or a weird CPU spike on your machine during the EVM test? You have got to aggressively question your own findings. Make absolutely sure your conclusions are genuinely based on architectural differences and not just, random environmental noise.
And hey, sometimes, despite your absolute best efforts, the data is just weird. And you know what? That is perfectly okay. If you suspect some random I/O bottleneck skewed your EVM write costs, just say so. Quantify that uncertainty, label your confidence levels, and don't be afraid to recommend follow-up experiments. Honestly, admitting that you need more data is kind of the ultimate flex of a mature engineer.
All right, once you pass all those sanity checks, your Markdown file should perfectly mirror this exact 6-part structure: introduction, measurement summary, observations, cost implications, prioritized trade-offs, and an evidence appendix. Once you have all that beautifully in place, it is officially ready to be merged into your broader capstone project and actually survive a rigorous peer review.
So what does this all mean? Well, I'll leave you with one final question to think about. Are your performance numbers truly driving your architectural decisions, or are you just cherry-picking data to validate what you already happen to believe? Let the actual constraints of the EVM and SVM guide you to the truth here. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me in the lab today. If you want to master more Web3 engineering concepts and check out more explainers exactly like this one, you've got to visit forge.college. Keep measuring your data, keep questioning your assumptions, and I will catch you in the next one.